If you want to learn how to shade a realistic eye and skin details, then in this video, I'm going to show you how to do it. As usual, these are the tools that I'll be using. They're also available in the description below, together with the link to the reference image. The first thing, shade the dark outlines or the dark details, okay? Such as the eyelid lines, the details on the cornea, the pupil, and the iris outlines. I am using the soft General charcoal pencil, but this doesn't really matter. You don't necessarily have to use only this pencil grade, okay, because any soft charcoal pencil should give you similar results. Now I'm shading these dark details or outlines before the actual shading simply because I want to preserve these details, okay? I want the details to remain visible throughout the actual shading process, which I'll later do using the brush and then the charcoal dust. And also the eyebrow. Now drawing it before commencing the actual shading can also help preserve the outlines and the details during the actual shading process, okay? As earlier said, preserving the details during the actual shading process will later help as a guide during the rendition of the final details. The next step, use the blending stamp to smudge the shading. This will help make it appear smoother and softer. Now you can also use the blending stamp to shade those small features or small details which you might struggle using the brush. For example, the iris and even those small intricate details on the sclera. Now before commencing the actual shading, you can map out the tonal values or lightly shade the base layer just as I am doing. Now this is to basically get a fair idea of the tonal values of the base layer or the form, just to increase the shading accuracy during the actual shading process. You can also do this with a pencil. Then in that case, you might consider using a light grade pencil. The next step is the actual shading process. That is when the shading of the base layer is gradually done using the brush and the charcoal dust. Now this usually takes a long time and really demands patience. To me, this is the most important aspect of the shading process because it's essential that you establish a solid base layer before adding the final details. So don't rush. Just be patient and gradually add layers on layers of the charcoal powder to render a solid and a vivid base layer. Once the layer is well established, you can then proceed to add the final details. You can start with a smaller brush to effectively and more conveniently apply the charcoal dust to shade the small details or features without affecting the surrounding areas. Now start from the shadows and then gradually blend into the lighter areas. Also apply the charcoal dust in small quantities so that you can easily have good control of the charcoal dust. This will also help you avoid overdarkening of a particular area too quickly. Use the bigger brush to easily cover more areas with the charcoal dust and also for smoother blending. And also don't forget the general principle of patiently applying the charcoal dust in small quantities to help you have good control of the charcoal dust, okay? And to also help you easily build smooth tonal transitions between the values. So after establishing the base layer, you can then proceed to add the final details. I'll start by darkening the faded dark details, mainly the eyelid lines and the small dark details on the sclera. After that, I'll brush over to soften the pencil shading. I'll later go over to reinforce the dark values. Next, I'll be shading the iris, and I'll be using the medium, the general charcoal pencil. I'll shade the iris by deepening the outer edge, allowing a soft gradient to form inward, which will basically give the iris a more lifelike depth. Gently brush over to soften the shading, and then go over again with a pencil for a smoother, soft, dark value. And with the pupil, now I'll shade the whole thing black, but then leaving out the section with the highlights. I'll later brighten this section using the eraser. Moving on. Now I'll be shading the corners of the sclera, but then with the medium royal charcoal pencil, okay, to purposely increase the dark values in this section. Now, on the skin layer, to be more specific on the eyelids and the portion above the upper eyelid, now I'll be shading over this portion with the same medium royal charcoal pencil to purposely increase the dark values and to also add a bit of soft dark texture to this section. Now this is going to basically increase the depth and the realism in this portion. With this direct shading with a pencil, I usually don't press too hard on the pencil, simply because pressing too hard on the pencil will likely cause unnatural patchy shading, okay? So just apply normal pressure on the pencil and then gently and gradually do the shading. And I'm also shading using the scribbling method, okay? That is, I'm using controlled overlapping and varied scribbles to create a texture effect that easily mimic the uneven skin surface in this section. And in the lighter values where the dark spots are more pronounced, I'll rather be drawing the dark spots but then using pattern dots, okay, to easily depict a realistic skin pores effect. Now when drawing the dark pores, ensure these pores you are drawing align with the tonal values and contours of the form to help achieve realism more accurately. Now what I mean is, in the areas of darker tonal values, the pores should generally appear darker and denser, okay? And then in the lighter areas, the pores should be lighter and then more sparse and more subtly rendered so that they don't disrupt the lightness of the form. And also with the drawing of the dark pores, now vary the pencil grades, as in use both the hard and the medium charcoal pencils, which both have different tonal values to draw the pores, so that you can easily draw dark pores with varied tones. Because the dark pores aren't all of the same darkness, so by varying the pencil grades, you can easily create variation among them, making them appear more realistic. And also with the freckles, now render them slightly larger than the dark pores, and also render them with softer diffused edges, and also avoid making them all uniform. Vary them to make them look natural. Observe how I'll be drawing the pores to gain insight into creating realistic dark pores with the charcoal pencils. The next step, now lightly brush over the pencil shading to soften it and to also blend it seamlessly into the base layer. The next step, let's add a highlight using both the electric and the Tombow erasers to make the features look very realistic. The Tombow eraser is pretty much easy to handle, okay? And so you can easily control the pressure on the Tombow and use it to create soft highlights and even intricate highlights. On the skin layer, I'll be drawing the highlight using patterns of dots, okay? This is to easily capture a realistic representation of the skin pores. Now, when rendering the highlight on the skin layer, I usually draw the highlight in between the dark pores. Now, this will help easily mimic the interaction of light on the skin's topography to easily create a sense of texture and depth, making the skin look very realistic. Also, the highlights should follow the contour and the tonal structure of the form, okay? Meaning in the lighter areas, you should make them appear strong and brighter, and then gradually fade as they move into the darker values so that you can easily create a smooth transition from the lighter areas to the darker areas or the shadows. Let's proceed to draw the eyelashes. Now when drawing the eyelashes, take your time and then render each strand individually. Okay, this will help you achieve a more realistic and a more natural look. And also with the eyebrow. Now take your time and then draw each hair strand with care and intention, one at a time, to help you better capture the realism and then the flow of the natural eyebrows. Okay, be patient when drawing the eyebrows. And then finally, you can darken the dark pores in between the highlights to make the overall skin pores appear denser. I'm using the gray charcoal pencil for softer and less intense dark pores. Now, if you don't have the gray charcoal pencil, you can also use a hard charcoal pencil or even an HB graphite pencil.